But, all right, before anybody touches anything, this is not a kitchen. It is a controlled environment wearing a kitchen's hat. But we have one table, 5 place settings, a serving cart with one wheel deliberately compromised, a tureen full of cold water pretending to be soup, bread rolls of 3 different densities, one tablecloth with a breakaway seam, and a roast that is actually foam rubber wrapped around a very apologetic sandbag. Everything that can hit a person is soft, but everything that can spill is room temperature. The audience is behind the tape because I enjoy spontaneity most when it has been measured. The invitation said to bring one mistake. Mine is the ladder that refuses to be where I remember leaving it. But I climb 2 steps to adjust the light, step backward, expecting the ladder, discover absence, descend through 6 emotional floors, and land in the serving cart. It should look like a man being betrayed by space. It is, in fact, 14 marks and a spotter.
I appreciate that you've opened lunch by explaining it has federal oversight. Mine is less ambitious. I carry a bowl of soup from there to here. Somebody says my name, and I turn only my head. The soup continues governing under the previous administration. It spills into a second bowl, which somebody else instinctively catches. And for one beautiful second, everyone believes the system worked. Then the handle comes off. What I want is not a pratfall exactly. I want the body to receive a memo from the hand. We have lost soup. The body suppresses the memo because guests are present. Then the heat reaches the wrist, cold water today, yes. And suddenly decorum becomes a failed institution. The laugh, if there is one, should come from the delay. Not soup falls, man reacts. Soup falls, man forms a committee denies soup, soup reaches cuff, democracy collapses.
That's very good, because the delay is the acting. Mine is a chair. Plain wooden chair, except one rear leg is fractionally shorter, and the seat has a hinge. I sit while continuing a dignified account of the menu. The chair warns me once. I ignore it. It warns me twice. I discreetly correct my posture and thereby make the third warning inevitable. Then, rather than simply falling, I attempt to preserve both the speech and a glass of wine. The glass survives every stage of my descent. I do not. At the end, I'm beneath the table, still holding it upright. And I finish the sentence. The engineering question is where dignity realizes it has been abandoned. Too early, and I'm preparing a joke. Too late, and I'm merely clumsy. I think the bad news arrives in the left buttock first, travels to the eyes, and is officially acknowledged by the right hand when it grips the tablecloth.
Mine is a bread roll. I reach for it while pretending not to reach for it because somebody else is talking, and apparently I was raised by wolves with table manners. The roll escapes my fingers. I catch it against the plate. It jumps into the water glass. I try to remove it with a spoon. The spoon launches it into the gravy. Then I make the crucial choice. I decide nobody saw. That's the whole character. A 46-year-old man has watched bread complete a triathlon across a formal table and thinks his best option is to put it back in the basket. I don't want a giant reaction. I want the smallest possible face on the largest possible moral failure. Eventually, someone takes that role. Maybe Robin. He bites it, and I have to live in a world where confession remains available but increasingly expensive.
The damp roll of Damocles. Mine is a fish platter, because nothing says fellowship like carrying Poseidon's briefcase through a doorway. The fish is rubber, the platter has a concealed pivot, and every correction makes the fish migrate closer to freedom. I enter as a waiter who has been told this lunch is terribly important. The nose goes left, I compensate right. The tail rises, I lower the elbow. A lemon begins rolling like a tiny yellow escape pod. I trap the lemon with my thumb, which releases the parsley, which I catch with my chin, and now the fish senses weakness, but I don't want the fish to fly immediately. I want us to see the waiter become a civilization devoted entirely to preventing one trout from touching carpet. The bad news enters through the fingertips, colonizes the shoulders, and finally reaches the mouth, which keeps announcing today's special after the empire is gone.
But, excellent. We have 5 failures with 5 different transmission speeds. That matters. Let's mark them physically. John, your news begins at the wrist. Michael, left hip. Tom, fingertips, but morally the face. Robin, fingertips into shoulders, into mouth. Mine begins in the foot when it searches backward and finds a theological objection. We'll rehearse without props, but catastrophe mime, 1/8 speed. Nobody decorate it. I know that request is pointed in this company, but the mechanism has to become legible before personality starts throwing confetti. Michael, sit. Tom, reach. John, turn. Robin, compensate. I'll climb. On my count, 1. Now freeze. But look at the strange thing already happening. Every one of us is extending trust into an object. Chair, roll, bowl, fish, ladder. Physical comedy starts before the failure. It starts with confidence. If the audience doesn't believe we trust the world, betrayal has no voltage.
Hold on, because I'm discovering my trust in the bowl is not actually in the bowl. It's in my own wrist. That's much more offensive. The bowl is just sitting there being ceramic. I'm the one who has appointed this wrist secretary of lunch, despite a record that would disqualify it from municipal government. At 1/8 speed, I can see I'm already anticipating the spill with my shoulder. That's a tell. I'm playing the knowledge rather than living the mistake. Can somebody press my shoulder down when I turn? Not force it. Just give it the information that nothing has happened yet. I need the first half-inch of soup to leave without the rest of me knowing. The audience gets privileged intelligence. They know before I do. That's where the little ache comes from, right? Watching a person remain loyal to a reality that expired half a second ago.
Precisely. Don't play the accident. Play the plan surviving too long. When a chair shifts, the amateur says, I am falling. The useful thought is, then I can still speak. Then I can still save the glass. Each proposition becomes more absurd, but each is reasonable when it arrives. A risk trend is not inevitability. The first wobble must not convict the chair. If I condemn it immediately, there's nowhere for the scene to go. Let me try. I lower myself. There, first warning in the left side. I don't widen the eyes. I narrow them because I'm listening through the body. Second warning. I move half an inch right, believing I've solved it. That correction loads the hinge. Third warning. Now the eyes widen because the evidence has changed. The chair is no longer leaning. The chair has developed an intention.
That's upsettingly elegant. My roll currently looks guilty before I touch it. Can we swap it for the ordinary one? Not the glossy hero roll. And that thing has an agent. Give me the sad dinner roll that looks like it came free with a conference room. Good. Now I reach while John is speaking. I miss by maybe a 1/4 inch, but instead of grabbing again, I use the side of my finger to hurt it. That's the decision that reveals I've done this before. It rolls toward the plate. Freeze there. My bad news arrives, but it's tiny. Bread has mobility. I don't yet know it has ambition. Then it hits the plate rim. My other hand could save it, but that would admit I was reaching. So vanity removes half my available rescue equipment. That feels true. Most disasters aren't caused by lack of hands. They're caused by one hand being assigned to innocence.
One hand assigned to innocence. Yes, officer, this hand has never met the roll, while the other is in gravy wearing a false passport. I'm decorating. Sorry. Let me strip it back. Fish enters. I'm holding the platter correctly. The first shift is almost beneath perception, just weight changing under my left palm. I answer with my right. Too much. The lemon moves. And here, this is important. I do not become a comic waiter. I become attentive. There's a little quiet inside the face. The room gets louder around that quiet because the task has become private. It reminds me of trying to keep a moment from becoming what everybody already suspects it is. If I joke too soon, I release the pressure. So the mouth continues the menu. Not a funny menu. Peas, potatoes, a sauce with dill. The absurdity must come from the fact that language is still laying tablecloth over an earthquake.
But, yes. And I've just found the dangerous flaw in mine. If the ladder is literally removed, my backward foot drops farther than expected, which makes the landing difficult to repeat. Instead, the ladder stays. We disguise the lower step by hinging it away under foot pressure, then guide my shin along a padded rail into the cart. The audience reads absence. My body receives a path, but that is the lovely fraud of safe catastrophe. I'm not trying to prove I can survive an uncontrolled fall. I'm trying to construct the exact sensory sequence of losing the world. Let's tape my footmarks, climb, settle, right foot down, left foot searches, toe brushes nothing, ankle flexes, knee stiffens, hand reaches for a rung that has folded away. But the face gets the news last because I'm still explaining the light. I'd like to finish one technical phrase on the way down. Something boring. Diffusion coefficient, perhaps.
No, because diffusion coefficient arrives wearing comedy shoes. Say something everybody understands. So your loyalty to the sentence is the strange part. The light should be softer now. That's almost tender. You disappear while reassuring us visibility has improved. Also, are we allowed to question why lunch requires you to adjust a light from a ladder during service? Because I feel the machinery has already earned a congressional hearing. Maybe the motivation is the lamp is flickering over Michael's chair. Michael insists it's fine. Robin's fish catches the flicker. Tom uses the distraction to pursue bread. And I turn because Adam says my name. Then none of these are separate routines. They're consequences. A catastrophe should not feel like 5 resumes stapled together. It should feel like one organism discovering it has 5 nervous systems and inadequate insurance.
Then begin with lunch genuinely proceeding. No one enters announcing an apparatus. Robin brings the fish because we are waiting for the main course. Adam notices the light because the flicker makes the fish appear to move before it has moved. John has the tureen because Robin's hands are occupied. Tom reaches for bread because the meal is late. I sit because I have been standing politely for too long. Each action is ordinary. The engineering remains invisible underneath. We should also decide who notices whom. If all 5 see every mishap, the room becomes a tribunal. Better that attention travels badly. I notice John's wrist but miss my chair. John sees Adam's ladder but not his own soup. Tom sees the roll and nothing else. Robin sees everything through the problem of the fish. Adam, elevated, believes he has the whole room and therefore sees least.
I'd like to notice Michael under the table only after I've put the contaminated roll back. Not because I care about Michael, because I need a witness, and then discover the witness has been removed by furniture. That lets me make a terrible calculation. If the dignified man is currently horizontal, maybe morality has no jurisdiction. Also, the empty chair after he goes down matters visually. Robin and I have some history with an empty chair, and I don't want to turn that into a signal flare or explain it. But bodies remember shapes. If the chair suddenly stands there without Michael, I may pause half a beat longer than the bread mechanics require. Then I continue. Not everything the body receives becomes dialogue. Sometimes the news arrives, gets stamped, and sits in a waiting room while you do the stupid next thing.
I understand. I won't cross that pause. I'll let the fish keep me where I am. The temptation would be to send a glance saying, I know what the empty chair means, and then we've put a velvet rope around something that worked because nobody occupied it. Better sequence. Chair empties, Tom pauses, fish slides, life resumes its vulgar campaign. Perhaps my trout's nose points briefly toward the chair like a compass with grief in it. No, too much. Strike that. The fish is rubber. It knows nothing. That's the mercy. We are the ones making weather around objects. Let it remain an object. I can hold company with Tom by not demanding recognition. Then later, if he eats the fish-contaminated roll, that is simply lunch behaving badly, not an emblem arriving with paperwork.
But good. We can protect that with blocking. Robin's sightline stays on the platter. Tom's pause remains available without being harvested. This is why slow rehearsal matters. At speed, we would congratulate ourselves for instinct and miss the places where instinct trespasses. Let's add props now, but no full falls. Quarter speed through first contact only, but Robin enters on the north mark. John follows with tureen. Michael approaches the hinged chair, but doesn't load it. Tom's hand goes to bread. I cross for the ladder. We begin in silence because nobody must be funny on command and because real lunch has the courage to be dull. Robin, the platter pivot is under the cloth rosette, but keep your thumb outside the red tape until the lemon moves. John, your bowl has a false inner lip. Pour angle begins at 12 degrees. Everyone ready? Lunch service, pass one.
I'm entering behind Robin, and already I hate his pace because my arms are holding a tureen. That's useful. I don't need to invent impatience. The object gives it to me. Adam crosses behind and says, "John, did that light flicker?" I turn my head. Shoulder stays quiet. The water touches the inner lip, climbs it, and now a narrow sheet goes over my cuff. I still don't feel it. The audience can see it. Michael is lowering toward the chair and happens to extend his empty bowl beneath the spill. That looks like competence. We should let it. The first accidental rescue needs a clean moment. Otherwise, the later collapse has no altitude. Michael catches the soup without looking. I turn back and see my tureen level lower, but his bowl mysteriously full. I don't react yet. I'm not sure whether I made a mistake or participated in catering.
And I mustn't look pleased. Catching it is not a trick I performed. It is a fact that occurred near my hand. I continue sitting. The short leg gives the first warning. My bowl is now full, which changes the geometry. I transfer it toward the table, but John's ladle catches my cuff. That delays the transfer. Second warning. I correct right. The hinge begins to open. At this exact instant, Adam steps onto the ladder and blocks John's view of me. Good. I am privately becoming horizontal. My right hand reaches for the table edge, finds the cloth, rejects it because pulling would disturb lunch, then returns because the chair has overruled etiquette. That double reach is the whole argument. The body knows before the character permits himself to know. Please mark the return point. 2 inches below the table edge, near the seam.
Meanwhile, I touch the roll. It moves toward my plate. I heard it. It hits the rim and goes into the water glass exactly when Michael's hinge opens, so the little splash hides the chair click. That's satisfying in a deeply unhealthy way. I spoon for the roll. The spoon bowl needs to be drier. Right now, it grips the bread and makes me look capable. We can dust it with starch so the roll skates. I lift, it slides, hits the gravy boat. Freeze. Here's my face. Not alarm, just resentment that matter has become personal. Then I look up for witnesses. John is looking at Adam. Adam is on the ladder. Robin is negotiating maritime law. Michael is disappearing. Nobody saw. This should feel like relief, not permission. Permission comes one beat later when I decide to retrieve the roll from gravy instead of abandoning it.
My fish has begun migrating because I slowed to avoid John, who slowed because he turned, who turned because Adam spoke, who spoke because the light flickered. Beautiful, blame moving backward through the room like a salmon seeking its birthplace. The lemon rolls. Thumb catches lemon, parsley rises, chin catches parsley. I continue. The potatoes are boiled, not gently boiled, not a flourish. Just a fact clinging to the ship. The fish rotates another 3 degrees. I feel it in both forearms. My shoulders rise, but the left rises faster, which makes the platter look level while increasing the pivot. That contradiction is delicious. The waiter believes symmetry is safety. It isn't. I take one step toward the table, but Michael's chair is now halfway into my landing path. I cannot see Michael beneath it. I see only furniture behaving provincially.
But stop. That chain works, but the ladder descent would currently send me into John, not the cart. We need to rotate the ladder 7 degrees clockwise and move the cart 18 inches toward the service door. Also, John's spill arrives too broad. Narrower stream, later sensation. I'll adjust the false lip after we reset. But notice what just happened, though. Nobody added a joke, and the room already developed in tension. The chair concealed its click beneath the glass splash. The fish inherited John's delay. Tom's vanity removed his free hand. The machinery is composing. That's the goal. We're not forcing 5 funny people to emit funniness, but we're giving cause and effect enough precision that the audience can become prophetic. They see the next disaster half a second early and cannot intervene. Laughter is sometimes helpless pattern recognition with permission to breathe.
And sometimes it's the sound people make when authority pretends the visible spill is not occurring. I want to test my denial. Once the water reaches my wrist, I look down. If I immediately jerk, we've spent the scene's political capital too cheaply. What if I first level the tureen? That is responsible. Then I move it away from Michael's bowl. Also responsible. Then I dab my cuff with the tablecloth while Michael is gripping the same cloth under the table. Now, my competent response becomes the force that completes his fall. I don't know I'm doing it. He knows but can't speak because he's still finishing the menu sentence. That feels less like random collision and more like institutions. Every person locally reasonable, collectively dragging a man beneath lunch. We should be careful, though. I don't want the metaphor standing up and asking for applause. It's still soup.
It will remain soup if I defend the sentence instead of the idea. My line can be, there's also a green salad for anyone who prefers. First wobble on green. Second on salad, John takes the cloth on onion. I descend on prefers. And from beneath the table I finish, 1. That's enough. No commentary. The glass or bowl, now, must remain level. Adam, can the hinge slow the final 6 inches? If I vanish too abruptly, the line becomes a punch. I want the room to lose me gradually while attending elsewhere. A risk trend is not inevitability. Each stage offers a plausible recovery until John's perfectly sensible dab removes it. Then the evidence changes. I let go of the cloth rather than pull John down with me. That choice should cost me the last support. Dignity isn't remaining upright. Sometimes it's choosing what not to take along.
But we can add a pneumatic damper beneath the seat. No pyrotechnics, no hard catch. You'll settle over 9/10 of a second, which is an eternity on stage and merciful on the spine. I'll verify the load before full speed. And Michael, that release is the cleanest action in the room. We don't underline it. Your hand opens. John gets the cloth. You go. But now my fall. Once I step backward, the hinged rung folds. My shin contacts the padded guide. I say, the light should be softer now. On softer, the cart receives my hip. The compromise wheel turns. Cart begins rolling. Crucially, I don't land in it like a gymnast. I arrive seated but still holding the adjustment pole, which hooks the tablecloth's breakaway loop. But the cart rolls, the pole draws the cloth, but the seam releases before dishes move. Only the gravy boat travels.
The gravy boat is where my role currently lives, so accident becomes witness tampering. Great. When the cloth loop pulls, the boat slides toward me. I catch it with both hands, forgetting I'm holding the spoon. The spoon flips the roll out. Now we need the roll's final route. It could hit the fish, but that's too tidy. Everybody's disaster touching everybody else starts to feel like a corporate team-building video. Let it land on Michael's empty seat. Then there's a soaked roll sitting where a dignified person used to be, and I have a choice. I can leave it. I can confess. Or I can pick it up and put it back. Obviously, I put it back, but slower now. I'm no longer concealing a tiny lapse. I am preserving an entire false history in front of physics.
And I take it. Not immediately. The fish must finish its own campaign first. Adam's cart brushes the service door, which swings inward and taps the end of my platter. The trout lifts, not flies, lifts as though considering a better offer. I bend my knees to absorb it. The platter levels miraculously. For one sacred beat, catastrophe has been canceled. Then the parsley falls from my chin onto my nose. I sneeze. The fish slides onto the table, perfectly centered, while the platter continues forward without it. That's important. The meal is served successfully by the failure. I remain holding an empty platter, still describing the sauce. Then I see Tom replacing the roll. I take it because the waiter's body is still obeying lunch. I bite. There should be no face for taste. The laugh, if it comes, belongs to Tom's face, not mine.
I have one concern. If Robin bites the roll after all that, the audience may wait for him to explode, choke, spit, some escalation. Refusing that is good, but we need to make the refusal readable. Robin bites, chews, and nods with ordinary approval. Tom receives the worst possible verdict. The contaminated roll is acceptable. His whole secret was unnecessary. That's a different kind of bad news. It arrives not through the fingertips, but through mercy. Nothing punishes him. The world simply declines to care. I think that is funnier and crueler than a spit take. Then perhaps Robin offers me the remaining half, because I'm still holding the tureen and look hungry. I cannot take it because both hands are occupied. Tom sees the contamination seeking a second victim and finally moves to confess. But that's when Adam's cart returns.
But returns only if we engineer a gentle rollback. The floor slopes slightly towards center, but I don't want uncontrolled motion. We can tension a low-profile elastic line beneath the cart, giving it a 6-foot outward roll and a slow return. I land, travel away while holding the pole, believe the event is over, then begin coming back without noticing. But the body receives this second bad news through the eyes. Everyone else is getting larger. I look over my shoulder too late. The cart's padded bumper contacts John behind the knees. John sits involuntarily on the cart edge, transferring the tureen to me. I catch it because that is what hands do when offered a disaster. But now, John is free to take Robin's role, but Robin has already extended it elsewhere. We shouldn't over-resolve. Increasing impossibility does not require perfect closure. It requires each attempted rescue to redistribute unfinished business.
From under the table, I can contribute very little, which may be my best contribution. I see shoes. I see the cart return. I see the roll pass overhead. My temptation is to emerge at the ideal moment with a remark, but that would convert disappearance into strategy. Better that I try to stand and discover the tablecloth has draped over my shoulders. I become an indistinct shape rising between courses. Not a ghost. If I play a ghost, it becomes pantomime. Merely a man who cannot find the edge of a cloth. My hands test the air. One touches the fish. I mistake it for the table edge, press down, and the rubber fish's head rises from the platter. Robin, seeing only the head lift, believes the fish has one final mechanical complaint. He adjusts the empty platter, which cannot help. That is where expertise becomes moving and useless.
While all of this happens, I'm trying to stop John from taking the half roll without announcing why. I can't say it fell into my water and gravy, because then I become a person who tells the truth after exhausting every alternative. So I ask, you want a fresh one? Too casual. John hears a trap because he has spent his life hearing traps. He asks why. I say no reason, which is universally the reason. Robin keeps holding it. Michael rises under cloth. Fish head rises. Adam and John are sharing a cart and tureen. This is the point where my little bread problem should become emotionally enormous to me and objectively irrelevant to everyone else. I finally say, that roll has been through some things. not a punchline, a confession with inadequate jurisdiction. Nobody has time to process it.
I like that. I look at the bitten roll, then at Tom, but I do not translate it into meaning for him. I place the remaining thing half on the empty platter. Sequence: eat first, wash the pan later, let meaning file its own paperwork. Then the cloth-covered Michael presses the fish rises, and I lower the platter beneath the roll to catch what is already on it. That useless correction tilts the platter. The half roll moves toward the edge again. I follow it with my whole body, but gently, because now the audience knows the pattern and velocity would be begging. The roll stops against the parsley rosette. Salvation by garnish. I exhale. That exhale shifts the parsley. The roll drops into John's tureen, now held by Adam. There it is. Not punishment, not redemption. Bread returns to water because matter has no respect for character development.
At which point I'm seated sideways on a returning cart, holding nothing, and somehow I'm the only person with free hands. That is unbearable. I reach for the tureen to help Adam. My cuff, still wet, slips on the handle. Adam compensates. The soup rises. We both freeze. This is the largest pending event, so the correct choice may be not to spill it. We've trained the audience to expect impact. What if the tureen rocks through 3 impossible angles and settles? The entire room holds. We have achieved stability. Then Michael, still under the cloth, finds the table edge and stands. The table rises half an inch. Every glass, plate, fish, spoon, lemon, and roll moves, but does not fall. A lunch balanced at the lip of apocalypse, and we simply continue serving. That restraint lets the machinery earn one more laugh without demanding a body pay for it.
But yes, the final effect is survival, not destruction. Harder to engineer, better to watch. We'll add non-slip dots under plates positioned to allow 2 inches of travel, stops beneath the table legs, and a gimbal ring for the tureen. The apparent danger expands while the real risk contracts. That's the bargain. But let's reset and do a full-speed technical run, but still no performance. If a beat doesn't arise, don't manufacture it. Trust the marks. Robin enters. John follows. Michael sits, Tom reaches, I climb, light flickers, head turns, soup crosses cuff, bowl catches, chair warns, roll escapes, fish migrates. But everybody receives different news, and nobody yet knows they are in the same sentence. Ready. Lunch service.
The run begins almost disappointingly. That's right. Robin says potatoes. John turns. Water leaves the tureen in a narrow silver sheet. My bowl receives it while I sit. First warning. I continue. There's also a green. Tom's glass gives a small splash. Second warning. Salad for anyone. John takes the cloth. I release it. Who prefers one? The chair folds and I pass below the table slowly enough to understand each inch, quickly enough not to negotiate. The bowl remains upright. From the floor I see Tom's roll enter gravy. I see Adam's shin meet the guide exactly. I hear him say, the light is softer. The cart rolls. Cloth separates at its seam with barely a sound. Nothing looks built. That is the extraordinary pleasure. Exact preparation disappearing into apparent misfortune.
The gravy boat comes at me. I catch it. The spoon flips the roll onto Michael's empty seat. I look for witnesses and find absence. There's the pause. I don't name it. I retrieve the roll. For half a second, I consider leaving it on my plate, accepting consequence at local scale. Then I put it back in the basket because apparently character is what you do after receiving extremely clear instructions. Robin's fish lands beautifully. He takes the roll, bites, nods. That nod destroys me. I start toward confession. Adam returns on the cart. John gets folded onto it like an unpaid intern. The tureen changes hands. I say, that roll has been through some things. Nobody answers. It is exactly the amount of accountability available in a room where a table has begun breathing.
I place the half roll on the platter. Michael rises beneath the cloth, touches the fish, and the trout's head lifts with the grave curiosity of an animal attending its own funeral. No, I do not play that. I simply see movement and correct the wrong object. The platter tilts. Roll slides. Parsley catches it. Breath moves parsley. Roll falls into tureen. John reaches. Wet cuff slips. Adam compensates. The tureen leans left, right, forward, then settles. Silence arrives. Not empty silence, not a demand, just 5 nervous systems waiting for the world to declare whether it is finished. Beneath the cloth, Michael stands. The table rises. Everything travels 2 inches and stops. I look down at the fish, now perfectly served. Dill sauce, I say, because the mouth has finally completed its assignment.
We hold it there, and I can feel the impulse to explain the success, to turn toward the audience and say, see, this is what happens when systems, whatever, no. The room has already made the argument with cuffs and bread. I stand from the cart carefully. Adam remains seated in it. Michael finds the cloth edge and uncovers himself without flourish. Tom removes the drowned half-roll from the tureen and sets it on his own plate. That matters. He doesn't return it again. Robin places the empty platter down. I ladle what remains of the soup into Michael's mysteriously full bowl, which needs none. We have resumed lunch under conditions no reasonable lunch would accept. Perhaps that is the ending. Not a pose, not a blackout. After impact, we sit. We look at what has survived. Someone passes the salt.
But, and before we call it, I want one more run later after the mechanisms cool, because repeatability is how we distinguish a fortunate accident from a designed one. But this run has the structure. The laugh points aren't where I predicted all of them, which is encouraging. Michael releasing the cloth created a silence, but Robin's ordinary nod at the filthy roll got the strongest response. John's tureen settling produced relief that became laughter only after the table rose. The machinery earned those. We should not polish away the awkward spaces. They are where the audience checks its own body. But also, every major failure now has a safe receiving surface. Shin rail, damp chair, gimbaled tureen, foam fish, low energy bread. Catastrophe is an illusion, but the attention inside it is real. I think that's why rehearsal can deepen spontaneity rather than kill it. We engineer enough safety for surprise to remain welcome.
There's another reason. Slow rehearsal tells you where not to act. I thought my eyes would announce the chair. They needn't. The hand opening on the cloth is sufficient. Robin thought the fish might carry meaning. It is better as rubber. Tom's pause at the empty chair remains his and does not become a speech. John's competent little corrections accumulate their own absurdity. Adam's line about softer light survives because he believes it. Precision removes pleading. One needn't ask the room to find something funny. One gives the event its cleanest possible life and allows the room its freedom. That is true. Beyond comedy, I suspect, though I won't drag the poor fish into philosophy again. Now, if somebody would help me inspect this chair before dinner, I should like to know whether it has forgiven me.
The chair has moved on. That's the worst part. It's already working with someone else. I'm taking my roll off the plate, by the way, not putting it back in the basket. Growth. Very small, legally insufficient growth. What surprised me was that my face got funnier when I stopped trying to keep it blank. Blankness was another performance. The actual thing was concentration. I was solving a bread problem with the seriousness of an air traffic controller, while 5 larger emergencies applied for recognition. And when Robin ate it, the lack of punishment made confession possible. Not noble, possible. That distinction matters. If the roll had exploded, I'd become a victim of the bit. Because he just chewed, I remained responsible for what I did. Annoying of him, honestly.
I accept your annoyance and decline to convert it into medicine. The roll was terrible, incidentally. Cold water, gravy, a faint note of conference carpet. But chewing gave the room time. That's what I'm taking from this lunch. Not every silence needs a mustache, and not every association needs to become a rope thrown across it. Sometimes the exact engineering is a hand staying on a platter, a mouth finishing dill sauce, a friend not crossing the space your body has marked. Then the joy can move anyway. It doesn't have to justify the catastrophe. It can be the tiny yellow lemon that rolls, is caught, escapes again, and finally sits beside the fish as though it had reserved the table. Shall we actually eat now, or has food lost its clearance?
We can eat, but I want the chair inspected, the tureen emptied, and Tom's bread entered into evidence. What I'm taking is the interval between visible failure and bodily acknowledgement. That interval can be denial, dignity, incompetence, hope, or all four sharing a cuff. The scene worked when none of us possessed the whole event. Each person made a locally sensible correction, and the lunch became impossible through cooperation. Yet it didn't end in annihilation. The objects traveled, the people adapted, the table rose, and somehow service continued. That's not optimism exactly. It's closer to respect for contingency. A trend is not a verdict. A wobble may become a fall may deliver soup. A dirty roll may receive no punishment whatsoever. You keep your hands available, preferably dry, and you don't confuse explanation with rescue.
But then lunch is called with one note, nobody sit in the marked chair until I replace the hinge pin. I'm serious. The comedy is over precisely where the uncontrolled risk begins. I'll reset the room afterward and write down the measurements while they're fresh. 7-degree ladder rotation, 18-inch cart offset, 9/10 second chair descent, 12-degree tureen lip. But those numbers are not the opposite of play. They are the hidden hospitality that lets 5 people surrender to timing without surrendering their bodies. We came in carrying separate mistakes. We leave with one machine made of trust, delayed information, bad judgment, and a fish that achieved its objective accidentally. That seems like a decent day's work. Pass the safe bread.
From my seat in the audience, I came in wanting the cheap seat. Thank Christ. I've spent enough of today looking under my own hood. I wanted 5 funny people to wreck lunch without making me responsible for learning anything. Naturally, they smuggled the lesson inside a gravy boat. The first thing that landed was Adam saying, physical comedy starts before the failure. It starts with confidence. That's the whole damn thing, isn't it? A fall is just impact unless I first believe the guy knows where the ladder is. Same with stand-up. The audience has to see you plant your foot on the argument like it'll hold. Then, when it folds, they're not laughing at randomness. They're watching certainty receive new information. Michael's "don't play the accident, play the plan surviving too long" was the line I'm keeping. That applies to every idiot in traffic, every marriage argument, every government program, every comic refusing to abandon a premise that died 30 seconds ago. But he gave it dignity instead of contempt. Each recovery attempt is reasonable when it arrives. That shifted something for me. I usually clock the bullshit early and want to prosecute it. He made me see that the funny part isn't merely that